Good evening, I'm Hugh Downs.
And I'm Barbara Walters, and this is 2020.
From ABC News, around the world and into your home, the stories that touch your life with Hugh Downs and Barbara Walters. This is 2020. Tonight, kids everywhere want it. Millions of parents buy it. 100% pure juice. That's what you think.
People who are cheating on food have become clever, more and more clever.
We found out what you may have been buying.
They paid for 100% apple juice and they didn't get it.
And the label says pure maple syrup, but what you got was
15% maple syrup. Yep.
And there's more. Rip-offs no test could detect until now.
Sample number 3 has been adulterated.
No doubt about it.
Brian Ross with a breakthrough in catching food doctoring schemes. Score 1 for the good guys and the children of America. Gotcha. And an urgent message to America from a dying woman.
Although the doctors at my HMO kept telling me I was okay, I knew better.
She was misdiagnosed for years under the care of her HMO, a healthcare option millions of Americans trust. It saved patients money, but at what cost?
Bad diagnosis, poor medical care took the life of your wife.
Yes.
These families tell tragic stories of loved ones treated by this HMO.
You pay for what you get.
Tom Gerald shows you what went wrong, leaving families to wonder about the ultimate cost. Plus,
1, 2, 3, 4.
This man has a problem.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Everywhere he goes.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Everything he does.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
He counts.
That would be 32 times.
He's not crazy. He has obsessive-compulsive disorder, a brain defect that makes millions of people repeat their actions over and over again.
And then again. And again.
Look at his apartment, 3 feet deep in trash, and he can't stop adding more. Now, there's hope.
People are changing their own brain chemistry.
Lynn Scher, with an amazing new therapy, rescuing patients who can't help but do things. Again, and again, and again. Those stories tonight, March 1st, 1996, after this brief message.
We begin with an outrageous deception, a food scam that has victimized you and your children and apparently some of our biggest food companies. After an extensive 4-month investigation, we have uncovered the truth that some of your favorite food items, including one of the most popular brands of so-called pure apple juice, a favorite among millions of young children, are not what you think.
Our investigation took us from coast to coast and as far away as France, where high-tech science finally exposed some very devious crooks. As ABC's chief investigative correspondent, Brian Ross, found out, for years they've been selling adulterated food products, products that are not as pure as they claim, and no one knew until now, not the experts and not parents who think they've been giving their children their very best.
If you're happy and you know it, you really want to show it. If you're happy and you know it, be real quiet.
When playtime is over, 2.5-year-old Jesse always knows what he wants.
He wants apple juice, the box. That's what he says. Apple juice, the box.
For Jillian's parents, it's the idea of something all natural for their daughter to drink.
It's wholesome, hopefully, and we prefer that she has that than something like Kool-Aid or something which has a lot of sugar.
And Griffin's parents pay extra to make sure he gets 100% pure apple juice.
It's either apple juice or water. We go through at least, I would say, 2 or 3 boxes this size a day.
But someone's been trying to cheat these children and their parents and children and parents across the country.
I don't want any kids drinking that, no. They paid for 100% apple juice and they didn't get it.
So this is not what it says it is?
No.
What do you say about that?
Adulterated.
Hundreds of thousands of gallons of some of the most popular, best-selling apple juices in America adulterated. Allegedly doctored by overseas suppliers. In a scheme uncovered only after a wide-ranging 4-month, 2020 investigation. An investigation that took advantage of two new state-of-the-art scientific tests that can detect crooks in the juice and food business who until now were virtually undetectable.
This is cutting-edge technology. This is as close to the edge as you'll ever get.
Dr. Alan Brous, one of the country's leading authorities on food adulteration, who worked with us in our investigation, says it all comes down to greed.
The crooks make out. They sell a product that's not real, and they make a ton of money. And they laugh all the way to the bank.
And they think, what, they can sneak it past you, past the labs of...
They did for a long time, didn't they?
Our investigation into crooks and fraud in the food business actually began not with apple juice, but with maple syrup. In the maple syrup state, Vermont.
Pure Vermont maple syrup.
But Reg Muir, a big Vermont maple syrup enthusiast and businessman, found things here weren't so pure when he began asking questions about a new competitor whose maple syrup prices were just too low to make any sense.
When someone can sell it for less than what it costs to make, you become suspicious.
Which is what led Reg Muir all the way to France, where, like Vermont, the quality of food and drink are a source of great pride, and where in the last few years, this food chemist, Dr. Gilles Martin, has put a lot of food crooks on the run.
People who are cheating on food have become clever, more and more clever.
But not clever enough to fool Dr. Martin's new high-tech test, which is now used by governments from Paris to Washington.
This product is mostly made of beet sugar.
Dr. Martin's maple syrup tests quickly confirmed the suspicions of Reg Muir back in Vermont. Maple syrup, including that sold under the LL Bean name at a premium price for its supposedly premium quality, full of beet sugar, sugar from beets.
And as far as I know, beet don't grow on maples.
According to the test results, about 65% beet sugar, which other tests cannot detect.
It was a form of theft, absolute outright theft.
So until you came along and decided to pursue this, there was really no way to know?
None whatsoever.
Muir is now suing the suspect company, American Maple Products of Newport, Vermont, which has gone out of business, and its owner, Roger Ames, who denied to us that he had ever adulterated any maple syrup, is under federal investigation.
How long did this go on? From 83 till 94.
But one of the former employees, Wayne Lucas, says his boss was so sure he would never get caught that bags of beet sugar can be seen out in the open in snapshots taken of the maple syrup plant.
That's the bag. That's the beet sugar. What do you think would have happened if they hadn't come up with that new test over in France? You'd still be doing this.
As for LL Bean, a spokesperson told us it had not known its syrup had been adulterated until we told them, and that since 1994, it has had another supplier, which, by the way, we also tested and found to be pure maple.
It can be very difficult to identify when a food is adulterated. Looks the same, may taste the same, may feel the same, but it's not what you expect.
And Dr. Michael Jacobson of the Consumer Group Center for Science in the Public Interest says food crooks who adulterate products are getting rich doing it.
It's outrageous. People are being gypped, totally gypped.
Now, it doesn't kill you. It's not going to hurt you, right?
That's right. It's harmless.
So what's wrong with that?
People are being cheated. People are paying maple syrup prices for beet sugar and water.
And it happens with all kinds of foods. In one of the best-known cases in the 1980s, Beechnut was discovered to be selling apple juice adulterated with sugar and water, and one of its top executives was sent to jail. And just last month in California, laboratory tests found some very expensive, supposedly pure Italian olive oil to actually be 90% cheaper oils, soybean, corn, and cottonseed oil.
This is the kind of thing that no consumer can detect on his own or her own. You need a very sophisticated chemistry lab to detect this kind of substitution.
Which is why we commissioned some of our own tests at Dr. Martin's lab in France, starting with some more maple syrup. This bottle of A&P's premium house brand purchased at an A&P store in Atlanta.
In this case, it is not pure maple syrup. It contains added sugar.
About 10% added sugar, at least for the batch this bottle came from. A&P and its suppliers told us they stand by the syrup, that their blend include syrup 6 or 7 years old, which can be mistaken for added sugar, something Dr. Martin and other top experts told us is just not true. A&P might be interested to know that when we tested the syrup its supplier markets under its own label, that came out 100% pure. Next, we tested this vanilla, bought at a Sam's Club store in Atlanta.
This product is almost water and alcohol.
15 times weaker than any vanilla Dr. Martin had ever seen. Not illegal, but something the new company owner admitted to us is true and now plans to fix. And then Holland House Red cooking wine, purchased at a store in New York City.
This product contains about 2/3 of water and sugar.
The manufacturer, the big Cadbury's food company, says only its cooking wine meets all federal requirements.
Well, I think on this, I'm probably one of the people who's been duped, because this label looks very familiar, and I think I'll
That's
find
in your
it.
kitchen, huh?
I think I'll find it in my kitchen. You would assume that it's really 100% red cooking wine. They're cheating people on a massive scale.
But it was when we set out last month to test apple juice, the second best-selling juice in America after orange juice, a staple of nursery schools and playgrounds everywhere, that we found the most surprising and serious pattern of apparent food fraud and adulteration.
Since then, the apple business has gone berserk.
Because of
Because
2020?
of what you've done, yeah.
This time, we took our samples to a lab outside Washington run by Dr. Alan Brous, who told us he had sent a letter last June warning the apple juice industry that with the price of apples skyrocketing, there were adulteration problems in the imported juice concentrate most American companies rely on.
We were starting to see sweeteners added, both the product from China, Argentina, and Germany.
After you sent out that letter, that warning, was there any reaction?
A little bit, but not much.
But there was plenty of reaction after the results came back from the test Dr. Brous's lab conducted for us, leading to the eventual discovery that 6 top American apple juice companies had adulterated juice on their hands.
This is the report you sent us on sample number 3.
Dr. Brous knew our samples only by number and found sample number 3 adulterated by 12% with a sugar additive.
How bad is that?
Shouldn't have any.
Shouldn't have any.
No. That means 12% of the solids in there came from sweetener that's been added to it.
The sweetener, a high fructose sugar syrup called fructuline, produced in Northern Europe, costs about half of what apple juice concentrate does.
It's clear to you that sample number 3 has been adulterated.
Crystal clear.
No doubt about it?
No doubt about it.
You're sure of that?
Absolutely.
This is what sample number 3 really is.
Juicy juice.
A product of the Nestle Company, which owned Beechnut in the 1980s when Beechnut's apple juice was found to be adulterated.
More people should have learned from it.
Have they?
Obviously not.
No one at Nestle headquarters in California would agree to appear on 2020. But within days of our first phone calls to Nestle, the company recalled an unspecified amount of its suspect juicy juice from warehouses and said that from now on, it would use the same test we had used to prevent it from becoming a victim of bad suppliers.
Nestle is a multi-billion-dollar corporation. They should be routinely checking their products.
Does it surprise you this could happen again, given what happened with Beechnut in the 1980s?
Well, it certainly says something about the corporate culture of Nestle if they didn't institute better practices, better procedures.
But it's not just Nestle's juicy juice. According to industry and government sources, adulterated supplies have been found in the inventories of Mott's, McCain's, Quaker Oats, Cumberland Farms, and Minute Maid. Last week, Coca-Cola, which produces Minute Maid, took legal action, filing a lawsuit against 3 European suppliers, which Coca-Cola says had sold it more than 400,000 gallons of adulterated apple juice since last fall.
Is it as bad as you've ever seen it in terms of
As
apple
bad as I've ever seen it, yes.
This week, the FDA announced it, too, was investigating what Dr. Brous first discovered in our 2020 apple juice investigation.
As long as the economics work, the sugar is cheaper than the fruit, there'll always be somebody wanting to add it.
That's what they've done here.
That's what they've done, yes.
1 big, 2 big, 3 big bubbles.
The FDA says there is no health threat whatsoever. But health risk or not, what we found in our 2020 investigation was very upsetting to the parents of these big apple juice consumers in New York City.
Infuriating. And to quote from the box, and remember, they're only kids once, so give them 100% with juicy juice. And, I mean, the whole back of the box, the little write-up is infuriating.
You didn't get what you paid for. You paid for 100% juice, you didn't get it. That's theft. People who made the decisions, who knowingly made the decision to do this, have to be held accountable. If they have no fear of that, then it'll just continue.
Brian, that really is outrageous. Now, I understand there are products that are pure, as they say they are. How do you know? You're standing in the supermarket. How do you know which ones are not what they say they are?
Well, Hugh, the source of the problem right now seems to be overseas apple juice concentrate. And we're told that in particular, for the moment, Germany and Eastern Europe are two countries to steer clear of. And on the side of apple juice boxes, it does show the country of origin.
How widespread is this fraud?
This seems to be a big problem. More than half of all the apple juice in this country comes from overseas. In fact, just this week, the state of Florida did the same test we did and found 2 more companies also selling adulterated apple juice.
Right. Are you more likely to get what it claims to be if the source is in America?
That's the best bet as far as we've been told, that USA is the best way to go in terms of pure, 100% pure apple juice.
Fascinating finding. It's amazing what lengths competition can drive companies to. Thank you, Brian.
Well, next, more and more of us are going to HMOs. But be careful. They do charge you less for your medical care, but as Karen's tragic experience will show you, sometimes you get much less than you pay for. Tom Jarrell with an important story for you and your family. Stay with us.
Now, a story of direct interest to more than 51 million Americans. People who receive their medical care at HMOs. 10 years ago, health maintenance organizations were almost unheard of, and now they're up and running all over the country, providing working families with low-cost and usually quality health care. Usually, but not always. As Tom Jarrell discovered, some families have come to know this through tragic experience. The ultimate cost can be very high.
It was the vacation of a lifetime for Karen and Pete Smith, a young couple in love, taking in as much of the world as they could.
Hello, Karen.
Hi, honey. Karen, come here, Karen. Squat on now.
But this would be Karen's last chance to swim with the dolphins in Hawaii or to light a candle at Notre Dame in Paris. Karen had terminal cancer. She and Pete were grabbing all the experiences of life they could as her days ran out.
She wanted to see as many different places as she possibly could. Whether I had to carry her through the airport, in a wheelchair, or whatever, she wanted to do it.
Karen fought her disease with remarkable spirit, and through it all, she made a crusade of telling others her story. In Washington, Karen told a congressional subcommittee she was dying because her HMO had let her down.
I'm only 28 years old, and I suffer from advanced cervical cancer, which is a direct result of a 3-year misdiagnosis by my HMO. My cancer has spread throughout my lymphatic system from my pelvis to my abdomen, and as of 6 months ago to my neck.
Karen's chances for survival began slipping away 8 years ago after she joined the Family Health Plan, a fast-growing HMO with several clinics in Milwaukee. Like most HMOs, the plan offered a package of doctors, labs, and hospital care for a set monthly premium. Pete and Karen knew they would have a limited choice of doctors, but for them, the Family Health Plan was cheaper than the alternatives. Things started to go wrong for Karen on her very first visit. She told the doctors she had been having bleeding problems, but the lab used by the HMO said her pap smear was normal, no cancer. The problem persisted through 15 office visits over 36 months with the very same advice. Nothing serious.
Her gynecologist denied and just said, well, we know it's not cancer.
Even with a hard, consistent evidence of continued bleeding over a long period of time, the alarm bells never went off within the HMO?
Never went off.
During those 3 years, my symptoms progressed quite rapidly. I was frustrated by the medical care I was receiving, and I was scared by what appeared to be an obvious severe deterioration in my condition. Although the doctors at my HMO kept telling me I was okay, I knew better.
Desperate, Karen, at her own expense, went outside the family health plan to cancer specialist Dr. David Hugerlin.
Could you tell instantly that she had cancer?
Well, I was highly concerned, yes.
Right away, it was clear from your test.
Correct.
Surgery confirmed the worst. Karen had cervical cancer, and it was discovered too late to save her life. Then a recheck of the pap smears and biopsies confirmed the unthinkable. The cancer had been there all along. The lab had misread 2 pap smears and 3 biopsies.
We're not talking about a simple mistake by a doctor. This is about greed. This is about being lost in the system. This is about falling through the cracks.
At the bottom of it all, Pete Smith believes, is money. While all HMOs try to keep costs down, he says, Family Health Plan went too far. One example he cites is the HMO's hiring of a bargain rate lab. The technician there was paid by the slide. This microscopic examination of cells takes time to be done properly, sometimes 5 minutes or more per slide. But the technician at this lab was often reading slides much faster than that. The more she read, the more money she made.
Family Health Plan said we chose a certified laboratory. How are we to know it wasn't any good?
Karen's attorney, Patrick Dunphy, points out that the man who ran the lab, Dr. Robert Lippo, sat on the board of directors of the HMO. And our 2020 investigation turned up this memo showing that in April 1990, Family Health Plan was told Lippo's lab technician wasn't doing good work. A sample rescreening of her slides showed she missed all 4 abnormal slides in a group of just 120 cases. A 100% error rate. Experts say a 5% rate of mistakes is usual. The lab pleaded no contest to criminal charges of reckless homicide and was fined the maximum $20,000. Family Health Plan now uses a well-regarded hospital lab. But the HMO's problems do not end there. As shocking as it was, Karen Smith's tragedy was not an isolated case. 2020 searched through state records and found other similar cases at Family Health Plan. Dolores Geary died. Her husband Keith says he watched her double over in pain, getting little help from the staff at Family Health Plan.
It was like we were bothering him. He kept telling us it's either a pulled muscle or they're treating her for infection, and no matter how bad the pain got, they'd keep saying pulled muscle or infection.
But for 3 years, Dolores had suffered from cervical cancer. Again, pap smears were misread by Lippo's lab, and Dolores's doctor failed to pick up on the early signs of danger. Jake Kutnick died. His wife Joan says Jake began complaining of rectal bleeding episodes in 1986.
They kept saying it's piles, piles. That went on for about 2 years.
2 years?
Yeah.
After all that time, the Kutnicks finally got referred to one of the HMO's specialists. The chart shows that doctor easily found an obvious and very large tumor, cancer.
The tumor was there and it already went into the liver. And the surgeon came out and told us he had 1 year to 6 months, and he lasted 1 year to 5.
And Donna Surma died. Her husband Stan says doctors at Family Health Plan literally watched her lung cancer develop.
They just insisted that she had pneumonia, pneumonia, pneumonia for 3 years. And here the spot on her lung got larger and larger and larger.
The Surmas finally went to an independent doctor outside the health plan. The diagnosis, terminal lung cancer.
You made a serious charge that this organization, through bad diagnosis, poor medical care, took the life of your wife.
Yes.
You're convinced of that, and you believe it today?
Definitely.
Family Health Plan denied any wrongdoing in these cases, and in a letter to 2020 stressed no court had ever judged the HMO responsible. However, each of the families got large malpractice settlements before their cases ever made it to trial. No one at the HMO would talk with us on camera. So how did this happen? How could cancers like these be misdiagnosed by so many different doctors for so long?
One of the things
John Connolly writes consumer guides on health care. He says misdiagnosis can happen in any medical setting. But the complaints we found in our investigation of Family Health Plan raise concerns, Connolly says, are most often associated with HMOs.
There's no question HMOs are designed to deliver cost-efficient care and to eliminate waste. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to discern what is wasteful and what is necessary.
Which raises the question, At Family Health Plan, what is considered wasteful and what is necessary? Cutting cost does not automatically cut quality, but the families we spoke to say Family Health Plan's rigid money-saving rules created serious gaps in the system.
There was no doctor-patient relationship whatsoever.
Problem number one, limited access to doctors. Family Health Plan pays 85 primary care doctors to care for its 107,000 patients. For this type of HMO, that's above average. But in order to keep up, doctors are sometimes overbooked and lesser-trained physician's assistants are used instead. It happened to Keith Yerry's wife, Dolores.
We rarely ever saw the doctor. We were always with the physician's assistant. I mean, it was really hard to get an appointment with the doctor.
Problem number two, getting in to see a specialist is extremely difficult, and even gynecologists are considered specialists. There are only 4 on staff, covering more than 40,000 women. Chris Rivera says she was made to wait 7 months with painful symptoms before her general practitioner finally acknowledged she was sick enough to see one of the more highly paid gynecologists.
When he was checking, he said, "I can't find your cervix." And I was kind of surprised because I thought, well, where could it have gone?
Then the doctor discovered her cervix was hidden by a large growth in her abdomen.
About this big, so I would say grapefruit size.
Chris was lucky her tumor wasn't malignant. Others have not been so lucky, like Jake Kudnick and Donna Surma and Dolores Geary. For years, as their cancers grew undetected inside their bodies, they never saw the specialist who might have saved their lives.
Do you feel patients are denied care in order to save money within the HMO?
I would say there were times when I felt that way.
This physician was an insider, a doctor who worked for the Family Health Plan and spoke to us in disguise. She cited problem number 3. Doctors were restricted by Family Health Plan rules to hold down expenses, right down to the list of drugs they could prescribe.
And these
and then
are dollar signs.
They give you dollar signs, right.
To show the cheaper and the more expensive.
Right.
Which will you urge to use?
The cheapest one.
Isn't that good business?
Not always.
Is it good medicine?
No.
The cost-cutting at Family Health Plan has paid off. Even though it's a non-profit, it brings in more money than most other HMOs in Wisconsin. So who benefits? Our investigation found those at the top, the people who make the decisions about spending and saving, may benefit personally. 2020 obtained this document showing 8 years ago, the top managers, even some doctors, got cheap stock options in the HMO's for-profit management company. Today, those options are estimated to be worth millions. It's all legal, but some say these kinds of arrangements raise concern about the potential for a dangerous conflict of interest.
Under the old system, a physician may have been rewarded for providing you more care, perhaps more than is necessary. Under a managed care system, the incentives may be such that the physician is rewarded for providing less care. And if the physician is rewarded in that direction, then who's watching out for the patient?
Pete and Karen Smith joined the Family Health Plan because it seemed to offer a lot of service for a low price. Pete says if they had known more about what they would be getting, they never would have signed up.
For those out there considering an HMO, from your tragic experience, is there a strong bottom line message?
The only comment that I can think of is that you pay for what you get. You just assume that everything's the same. Unfortunately, that's not the correct assumption.
Pete now lives alone with his anger. Karen died last March, but not before leaving her mark. One story, one voice in the continuing debate over managed care.
I am so very young and should have my whole life to look forward to. I'm married to the most wonderful man, but I'll never bear his children. My parents will have to endure the ultimate nightmare of outliving their youngest child's life. You see, I'm not the only one affected by this abuse. My HMO family health plan has shattered the lives of everyone around me.
Poor soul. Tom, this is one of the most important decisions that families have to make now.
Beyond a doubt.
How do you choose an HMO?
It's complicated, Barbara, but consumer experts point to these considerations. One, can you choose your own doctors? Don't get stuck with the ones they have and they insist that you use them. Choose your own doctors if you can under a plan. 2, can you get an outside medical specialist in a crisis? Easily. 3, and some plans are offering this now, can you go outside the HMO for a second opinion? And for a small extra fee, some are offering that. Those are good tips to begin with, but this is an unregulated business. It is a buyer beware situation.
And if you can do some homework, ask some friends, or call consumer agencies, that can help.
They're all there, and they can help a great deal, and it's so major.
Oh, what a decision it really is.
Right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Well, next, some very peculiar behavior. What would make anyone live like this, or like this? Repeating their actions dozens, sometimes hundreds of times. Lynn Scher has the answer, a strange but surprisingly common disorder, after this.
From ABC News, 2020 continues. Once again, Hugh Downs.
Their behavior is very strange, and they know it. They are people who fixate on one particular action, repeating it over and over, driving themselves and those around them crazy. Their problem has a name, obsessive-compulsive disorder. 1 in every 40 Americans is affected, and we all have a touch of this. But tonight, Lynn Scher brings you some of their stories and word of a promising new treatment for this very odd disorder.
When I first met Edward Glazer here in Los Angeles, he was doing something most of us do daily, buying the local newspaper.
Do you want one too?
No, not for now, thanks. But then he bought another, and another, and it became clear he wasn't just trying to catch up on current events.
I would get up every morning and I would buy 5, 6, 7 different papers. I would most likely just take them home, read them for about maybe 5, 10 minutes till I got tired, and then just put them down and never touch them again.
Buying and saving newspapers is a compulsion he can't resist. Edgy, as his friends call him, also can't resist garage sales or the trinkets and toys he finds on the sidewalk or in trash cans. His compulsion is so out of control, it results in this. Living on top of what even he calls a landfill. And that's after just the last 2 years of hoarding.
I'll give you an example. If an obsession...
Blue Headley of nearby Venice, California, was tortured by an onslaught of equally irrational compulsions. He couldn't drive his car without stopping to check if he'd hit someone.
So I would look real closely, and the anxiety right now, it's real strong. It's saying, there's somebody lying there dead. There's
What are
blood
you
all over
looking
the
for?
place. I'm looking for a dead body.
There's nothing here. Opening the mail meant inspecting every inch of every envelope to make sure he hadn't missed something. One of his most debilitating obsessions?
I open it up. And I
constantly thinking he'd locked the neighbor's cat in his refrigerator.
What my obsession makes me do is name everything in the refrigerator to prove that the cat's not there. So I would have to say, okay, that's Arm & Hammer baking soda. It's not a cat, it's baking soda. It's not living, it's not breathing, it's not going to die.
So you'd have to go through every
single item in the refrigerator. But usually I have to go back again. Do the same thing over and over again. And then again. And again.
For both of these men, the illness driving this bizarre behavior is obsessive-compulsive disorder, or OCD, unwanted intrusive thoughts that force them into constant repetitive rituals. Until now, traditional medical treatment, drugs or behavior therapy, has failed them. But a recently developed program is bringing new hope to 5 million OCD sufferers. Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz of UCLA claims that by using his treatment, patients can fight their OCD and beat it. What's new is that the patients do it all by themselves with little or no medication. Even more startling, he says they can virtually rewire their own brains in the process.
You know, it's not just an external manipulation by medicine or surgery that needs to be done to change the body. The person themselves can change the body. Even after they're ill, they can change the physical problem that's causing the ailment.
The ailment can destroy their lives. Listen to Edgy's story. He is a hoarder who's had OCD since he was a child, a lonely child who found it hard to make friends.
It was easier to make friends with inanimate objects. Books, magazines, they inform you, they educate you, and they never leave unless you choose to make them go away.
Do you find it uncomfortable living with all this stuff around you?
I would find it uncomfortable not having it.
I have to tell you, Edgy, this pile of books and magazines and newspapers has got to be 3 feet high. Aren't you worried about sanitary conditions
No.
with all this stuff here?
No.
You're not?
Living with OCD for most of his 47 years has led Edgy to pain and despair.
It has brought me to the brink of insanity. It has brought me to the brink of contemplating suicide more than once.
While Edgy's OCD symptoms are somewhat rare, Jeff Venglass has a much more common form, but equally severe. Jeff is a counter.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1.
For reasons no one understands, his OCD makes him count in sets of 4. Anything he touches, the counting sets in.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3.
Anything he passes, windows, doors, the counting ritual takes control.
3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4.
The rituals are everywhere I go in every aspect of my life. There's a ritual. If I have to walk out the door, I'm counting as I go out the doorway. If I'm brushing my teeth, I'm counting. If I'm doing my hair, I'm counting.
1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1,
Everything
2, 3.
is done in the exact same order every day.
Jeff, like about half of all adults with OCD, began showing symptoms as a child. He's 22 now, and his OCD has gotten progressively worse. So bad, in fact, that 3 weeks ago he lost his job and is about to run out of health insurance.
People with OCD are just trapped. You know these things are just asinine, but you have to do them.
What would happen if you didn't count? What would happen if you didn't complete the rituals?
The mass sense of anxiety of something horrible is going to happen would just be overwhelming.
What's horrible? What might happen?
I guess I have a fear of death.
Jeff's compulsions got so overpowering that his wife, Melissa, was dragged into doing the rituals with him.
I was counting everything. Before I left, I had to kiss him 32 times.
Well, show me how that worked. Tell me, give me, just go over the little routine.
See, that would be 32 times.
We learned to kiss really fast.
Jeff doesn't have much hope that he'll ever get better, particularly in a world where few people understand or care about his problem. The most common reaction? Why don't you just stop?
If I could just stop, don't you think I would have 10 years ago? I think probably in the last 10 years, I've probably wasted 2 or 3 years of my life doing these rituals. That's just wasted time.
It is that extraordinary self-awareness that Dr. Jeffrey Schwartz uses to help OCD patients cure themselves. He says the most exciting result of his research is the evidence that changing their behavior actually changes the way their brains work.
You're saying that these patients are literally changing the chemistry of the brain themselves?
Yes, absolutely. We have now strong scientific data that is totally consistent with that. People are changing their own brain chemistry.
He says this is the proof. PET scans, color-enhanced images of the brain in action, before and after Dr. Schwartz's treatment for OCD. Like most experts, he believes there's a chemical imbalance in a certain area of the brain that occurs in patients with OCD. He says the structures in this area of the brain overheat, that's the yellow section, and act as if they're literally locked together. He calls it brain lock. That brain lock causes inappropriate urges to become stuck in the brain, so they occur over and over and over again. After patients go through his self-treatment approach, Schwartz says, the brain cools down, that's the blue area, and the OCD symptoms diminish. Dr. Schwartz has now written a book claiming this is the first scientific evidence that behavior therapy can change the brain the same way medication does.
I feel like Schwartz gave me ammunition. He gave me weapons to fight it. Now I get to use them.
Blue Headley, aspiring author and actor, went through Dr. Schwartz's program and is convinced he has found the road to a cure.
Schwartz is he's a very enthusiastic guy, and he knows everything there is to know about OCD. And he said that, that he had the cure.
Did he cure you?
I am curing myself.
Remember his obsessions, including the one about locking the cat in the refrigerator? Now he's over all of them, and he says he did it with 4 specific steps he's recorded in this little notebook that's with him at all times. Step 1, when an obsession invades, relabel the thought. In other words, when Blue thinks the cat is locked away, he recognizes that's not true.
Right away I know that's an obsession, so I rename it. That's an obsession. And then I do the second step, which is reattribute.
Reattribute. That means put the blame where it belongs, not on himself, but on the chemical imbalance in his brain. Step 3, refocus. Instead of acting on the compulsion, do something else, something pleasurable. This is the most critical step. Blue says he accomplished this one by burying himself in the screenplay he is writing.
And the anxiety is strong, really strong, like paralyzing. I was extremely anxious all the time and always feeling lost.
It is during this step, Dr. Schwartz says, that the patient is actually changing the brain through behavior. In 2 to 3 months, with practice, the urges greatly diminish and become controllable. Step 4, revalue. As the urges are brought under control, the patient comes to realize that the OCD thoughts are unimportant and meaningless. Dr. Schwartz cautions that the only way a patient will succeed is with self-will and strong motivation.
These people have to work. There is such an amount of self-observation, thinking things through, and then making a new decision about how to act on the feeling your brain is sending you.
Compared to mainstream treatments, which are about 75% effective, Dr. Schwartz says his program works equally well, but is far more accessible to patients, since they don't have to rely on therapists or drugs once they've learned the 4 steps. And while it doesn't make all the obsessions go away, it does make them more manageable over a lifetime. That's why Jeff Venglass is so eager to try the program, to end the agony that has plagued his life. And it's why Blue Headley is so enthusiastic about how it's helped him. Now he's full of confidence, able to concentrate on a new career. As for Edgy, he also participated in the 4-step program. He says he's improved, but it's been more of a struggle. Although he can't yet bring himself to dispose of his acquisitions, he brings home far less now, and he's gained an insight into his illness that never occurred to him before.
I have to consciously every day decide, do I want to continue letting the OCD control my life or regain control of my life and not act on the impulses?
It's a fight every day. You have to psych yourself up every day. And Schwartz has a way of doing that. He has a Buddhist saying, though 1,000 times 1,000 men are conquered in battle, the one who conquers himself is truly the master of the battle. If I want to have a better life, I have to do this. It's that simple.
If this is a chemical imbalance, Lynn, wouldn't drugs do it, take care of it?
Barbara, they just don't work for everybody. Don't forget, there is no cure for this. It's just that some combination of drugs and/or behavior therapy, for the majority of people, helps them to manage it very successfully, but there's no cure.
Do other doctors agree that you can consciously change your actual brain?
No. As a matter of fact, this is a very controversial claim. Other neuroscientists say that what Dr. Schwartz is describing is simply the brain changing itself. A mental process can't do it. Dr. Schwartz respectfully disagrees. He says through behavior, his OCD patients are willfully rewiring the circuitry. So there is a controversy.
Well, we all have a little bit of this, as you said. I guess it's the amount. Thanks, Lynn.
When we come back, we warned you first about American children and Ritalin, and now international experts are jumping on the bandwagon. Stay with us. Now, an update. A few months ago, Tom Jarrell brought a frightening trend to our attention. abuse of the drug Ritalin. Now, Ritalin is a help for children with attention deficit disorder. But as we found out, more and more schools are now recommending Ritalin for children who act out in the classroom. And parents like Debbie Brown are angry.
In my son's 5th grade classroom, 13 out of 22 children were on Ritalin. They wanted all their kids to be zombies. They wanted all the children to sit there like robots and look straight ahead and not do anything.
Well, just this week, international experts rang the alarm about Ritalin, confirming our report. The UN group said that up to 12% of American boys 6 to 14 are now on Ritalin, and they stay on it longer than children in any other country. The report also suggested that overprescription of Ritalin could threaten the well-being of American children over the long run and lead to adolescent addiction problems. Their recommendation, when it comes to Ritalin and your children, be careful, go slow. But as our story showed, you should become involved and find out if your child really needs Ritalin. We'll be right back. Now, time to check in with Nightline, and here's Ted Koppel with a preview of tonight's program.
Tonight on Nightline, the story of a woman who was trained to heal, but found herself in South Georgia leading a fight against fear and bigotry. Part 2 of the journey of a country doctor, tonight.
That's Nightline after your local news. And that is 2020 for tonight. We thank you for joining us.
And remember, we're in touch, so you be in touch. I'm Barbara Walters.
And I'm Hugh Dow.
And for all of us here at 2020, have a good weekend. Good night.
2020 is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
The American Broadcasting Company, ABC.